I gave them everything. Years of sacrifice. Holidays spent alone so they could travel. A mortgage paid off with late nights and early mornings. A house built not with money but with memory. I thought that would be enough. I was wrong. They said it was for my safety. Just a few days in the home to rest, to be cared for. You've done so much, they told me. Let us take it from here. So I packed a small bag. Just the essentials. A framed photo. My husband's old sweater. I locked the front door, not knowing it would be for the last time. And when I asked to come home, they said no. The locks had been changed. My name erased. My furniture sold. My house listed for buyers I'd never met. They had taken my home before my body had even cooled to stillness. And yet the betrayal didn't end there. It was deeper than greed. It was colder than distance. But I waited. I listened. And I remembered who stood beside me when they disappeared. Quiet, patient, unnoticed. They wanted my house, so I gave it away. This is the story of how my children betrayed me, and how I silently gave it all away. Before everything changed, I was a mother. Not a perfect one. Not the kind you read about in books. But the kind who knew the difference between a cold and a fever without checking the thermometer. The kind who could stretch one chicken across 3 dinners. The kind who cried in the laundry room just so they wouldn't see. We bought the house in the spring of 1984. It wasn't big, but it had soul. Hardwood floors that creaked just enough to remind you where you were. A staircase that echoed with teenage footsteps. A backyard where my husband used to sit in his lawn chair with the Sunday paper, pretending not to fall asleep. He called it our forever home. But forever came sooner for him than it did for me. Pancreatic cancer doesn't wait. It doesn't ask. Takes. Quietly, quickly. 1 minute he was fixing the garage door. The next I was alone. Just me, and 2 kids who still thought monsters only lived under the bed. So I did what mothers do. I stood up. I moved forward. I learned to make pancakes with one hand and sign mortgage papers with the other. I sat through parent-teacher meetings with eyes so tired they burned. I missed my own birthdays because theirs came first. Kyle was the thinker. Always building things, taking them apart, asking questions I couldn't always answer. Diane was the fire. Spirited. Beautiful. Quick to laugh. And quicker to walk away when she didn't get her way. They were my world. And when things got hard, and they often did, I found help. Her name was Maria. She came on Thursdays, then Tuesdays, then eventually almost every day. She wasn't much older than Diane. A quiet woman, barely 5 feet tall, with strong arms and soft eyes. She never spoke unless spoken to. Never asked for more than she was given. But she noticed everything. She remembered how I liked my tea, milk first, never sugar. She folded my sheets the way my husband used to. She hummed hymns under her breath while she worked. And sometimes, if she thought I wasn't looking, she'd leave little notes in the kitchen. "You are doing great, Miss Evelyn. Your husband would be proud." She wasn't family. But in the ways that counted, she became more than that. Years passed. My children grew. Left. Phone calls got shorter. Holidays fewer. But Maria stayed. Through surgeries, birthdays spent alone, winters when I couldn't lift the shovel. She stayed. And the house? The house aged with me. The wallpaper faded. The wood softened. But the walls still remembered laughter. And the floor still knew the rhythm of our lives. I didn't think I was growing old. I thought I was just growing into the next part. But aging isn't something you feel all at once. It sneaks in. Through the joints. The memory. The silence. Until one day you realize the world has gone quiet. And the only people left calling you are the ones waiting for you to sign something. The house used to echo with footsteps and laughter. Now it echoed with something else, absence. First it was just the usual excuses. "Mom, we're swamped this month. Work's been crazy. We'll try to make it out next weekend, okay?" Next weekend never came. And when it did, they sent flowers. Generic cards. A voicemail at dinner time. Kyle lived just 3 towns over. But I saw more of his LinkedIn updates than his face. Diane was always between yoga retreats and board meetings. I couldn't keep up with her titles anymore. When they finally did show up, their visits were brief, efficient, almost like appointments. They asked the kind of questions that didn't wait for answers. "Are you still climbing the stairs? Do you take your meds on time? Have you thought about, downsizing? Downsizing. That was their new favorite word. They said it with a smile like they were doing me a favor, like the home their father and I built, brick by brick, dream by dream, was suddenly too much for me to handle. And then came the jokes. Little barbs masked in laughter. This place still has dial-up? Imagine what this lot would go for in today's market. Mom, you could move into one of those cute little apartments. No stairs, no fuss. But I knew what they were really saying. They didn't see a home anymore. They saw equity. While my children planned what would happen to my house, Maria kept living in it. She didn't ask questions. She just paid attention. She noticed when I started forgetting names, then dates, then whole mornings. She kept a chart of my medications, labeled in handwriting so neat it looked printed. She reminded me to eat, to rest. She even remembered which song made me cry without ever asking why. On my birthday, I didn't hear from Diane. Kyle sent a text. Maria baked a lemon cake from scratch. She lit one candle and sat with me at the table, smiling like it was her own mother she was celebrating. And when I thanked her, she just said, "You're not alone. I see you." The first time I collapsed, I thought it was exhaustion. The second time, I wasn't so sure. Maria called the doctor. Kyle called the insurance. Diane called a transition specialist. They started using words like support, safety, and next steps. But no one asked me what I wanted. They smiled through every suggestion. Brochures slid across my kitchen table like dinner menus. They weren't talking to me. They were talking around me. I watched my life become a checklist. House appraisal, medication plan, estate management. Felt less like care, and more like conquest. We need to move fast before her condition worsens. She won't even know the difference. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about control. And just like that, the home I once opened to them started to feel like it didn't belong to me at all. If this part broke your heart like it broke mine, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let's talk about it. It started like concern. Warm voices. Gentle hands. Promises made in the same tone you'd use to put a child to sleep. Just a few days, Mom. 1 week, maybe 2. You need rest. You'll have your own room. Fresh sheets. A nurse nearby. Just to be safe. They said it so sweetly. I almost felt guilty for hesitating. Kyle even offered to drive me himself. Diane packed a small overnight bag like she was sending me on a weekend getaway. No one said it aloud, but I could feel it. They were rushing. Maria stood by the door as they led me out. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her eyes were already saying goodbye. The nursing home smelled of antiseptic and overcooked carrots. The air was dry. The windows were locked. I kept telling myself, just a few days, but on the 4th day when I asked to go home, Diane said she'd check the schedule. Kyle stopped answering altogether. When Maria tried to visit, they said she wasn't on the list. When I asked to use a phone, the nurse said mine had been misplaced. I wasn't resting. I was being contained. Back home my keys were gone. The locks had been changed. And in my absence my life was being dismantled piece by piece. The photo albums I kept on the coffee table, packed into storage bins. My favorite reading chair, donated. The house wasn't mine anymore. At least that's what they told me. They brought in a lawyer. Said they needed help managing things. While I recovered. It was just temporary. I don't remember much from that meeting. My blood pressure had spiked. I was on 2 new medications. The words blurred. The room spun. But the pen was placed in my hand. And I signed. With that single signature I became a guest in my own life. They had control. Over my bank accounts, my medical care, my property. Over me. The house was listed online within a week. Photos of my living room, my curtains, my wallpaper, on full display. The listing said charming vintage fixer-upper. No mention of the birthdays celebrated in that kitchen. The anniversaries marked by candlelight in the dining room. The tears I cried in the hallway after my husband died. They weren't selling a house. They were erasing a history. My history. Maria came to check on me. To drop off my favorite shawl and a tin of cookies. But she never made it past the porch. They had removed her from everything. the phone list, the visitor log, the family. And still, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb, empty, floating in a place between what was and what had been taken. I had raised them to be strong, independent, capable, but I hadn't raised them to be kind. Or maybe I had, and they had simply forgotten. I didn't know it then, but something inside me had shifted, a quiet awareness, a still steady decision, that I would not leave this world with my name written in invisible ink. They had taken my home, but not everything was lost. Not yet. I hadn't seen that envelope in years, tucked inside a purse I hadn't opened since my last church service. It smelled like cedar and dust and memory. The handwriting stopped me. He always wrote like he spoke, gentle but clear. Even in ink he never shouted. I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a forgotten grocery list. But it was more than that. Much more. He wrote it the day we made the final payment on the house. A quiet celebration. Just 2 cups of instant coffee at the kitchen table, and a dance under the flickering porch light. He wrote, "This house is more than wood and walls. It's the one thing I've built with you that will outlive me. Make sure the kids know this is not a prize. It's a promise. Place to come home to. A place to remember who they are. Don't ever let it be reduced to dollars. Protect it." I sat there, in that small room with peeling paint and borrowed time, reading his words like scripture. And for the first time since they put me in that place, I felt something move inside me. Not anger. Not grief. Something older. Something quieter. Resolve. I raised them in that house, bandaged their knees, dried their tears, watched them take their first steps and later, take everything for granted. They were built in that house. Their confidence, their ambition, their safety. But they didn't see home when they looked at it anymore. They saw hardwood floors, market value, profit. All the moments that gave that house its heartbeat. To them they were clutter. Junk to toss before the open house. I had been forgetting things lately. But not everything. Tom Weller. He was my husband's friend. A retired attorney. He once helped us draft the first will. Said he'd always be a call away. I hadn't thought of him in years, but now he was the only person I could think of. Maria had been trying to reach me. I hadn't seen her since that day on the porch. They had cut me off from everything familiar. But they hadn't cut me off from myself. Not completely. That letter from Robert didn't just remind me of what I had lost. It reminded me of what still remained. The deed. The will. The name on the title. I wasn't dead. I wasn't done. And I wasn't going to let them write the ending. Wait, did you see that coming? If your jaw dropped like mine did, tap the subscribe button right now. And ring that notification bell, because what happens next will leave you speechless. I used to think silence was peaceful. But the kind of silence that lives in these walls isn't peace. It's the kind that grows teeth. That chews through your confidence one forgotten morning at a time. Days passed. I tried calling. Kyle's voicemail picked up twice. Then his number stopped working altogether. Diane's assistant answered once, told me she was in Europe. Then she hung up before I could finish my sentence. No one came. No one called. The staff changed shifts with eyes that looked past me. Medication came in cups. Meals came cold. Conversations came in echoes, unfinished, interrupted, and forgotten. And the others, the ones I ate with, walked beside, shared silence with at the window, they all had stories too. Different names, different cities, but the endings were the same. Children who meant well until money was involved. Homes sold. Wills rewritten. Lives relocated like furniture no longer needed. It hit me one afternoon while I was watching the rain. This place wasn't a home. It was a waiting room. And no one, not one soul here, was waiting for someone to come back. But then, one night, I smelled cinnamon, and lemon, and something I hadn't smelled in weeks, hope. Maria had slipped in like a ghost. No words, just a smile and pie. My favorite, lemon custard with cinnamon on top. She sat beside me just like she used to. Her hands warmer than the room. Her eyes more familiar than the nurses' names I kept forgetting. For a long time we didn't say anything. We just listened to the pie crack beneath the spoon. And then she asked, "What do you want to do, Miss Evelyn?" Not what they want you. I didn't know how to answer, because no one had asked me that in years. But that one question, spoken softly over shared pie in the middle of a nursing home night, opened something inside me. What do I want? I want my name back. I want my voice back. I want the story of my life to belong to me again. And I want them to know that I remember. She never said it, but I understood. Maria had been watching, collecting, preparing for the day I would stop surviving and start reclaiming. I wasn't strong enough to walk across a room without help, but my name was still mine. And so was the truth. That night, after she left through the side door, I didn't sleep. I wrote. I planned. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting to die, like I was beginning to live again. But this time on my terms. They thought I had faded, that their silence would dissolve mine, that I would forget enough to accept whatever they told me to believe. But what they didn't know, what they never understood, was that even in stillness, I was paying attention. Maria became my eyes, my ears, my legs, and eventually, my voice. Tom Weller, my husband's old friend. He was sharp, measured, and deeply loyal to the promise he once made over a backyard barbecue. If you ever need someone to watch your back, Rob, I'm here. Tom didn't need convincing. He saw it immediately. The deception, the manipulation, and the one detail they had missed. I had never signed over the house. Not officially. Not fully. They had pushed a temporary medical power of attorney through while I was on sedatives. But the deed? The actual ownership of the house? It was still under my name. And only mine. The loophole they overlooked was the space where trust ends and law begins. I still held the power, hidden behind the walls they thought they had sealed off. We got to work. In secret. In silence. In strength. Tom drafted a new will. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Everything I had left, my jewelry, the bonds, my wedding china, was to be donated or given to people who had shown me dignity. And the house? The place where I had kissed scraped knees, baked birthday cakes, and buried my husband's laughter in the walls? I signed the deed. To Maria. They saw her as a maid, a background presence, a shadow in the corner of their ambition. But I saw the woman who stayed, who cared, who carried my dignity when I could not lift it myself. They had taken everything they could, but I still had one thing left, the final word, and I would make sure they heard it loudest. After I was gone, I didn't scream, I didn't confront, I didn't fight them in the open. I built my answer, like a slow, careful quilt, piece by piece, until every part of my truth was stitched into something unbreakable. I wasn't reclaiming revenge. I was restoring balance. They assumed the silence meant surrender, that my quiet was weakness. But silence is not the absence of action. It is the waiting room of consequence. With Tom's help, we filed the revocation papers. Every false signature, every improper use of that power of attorney, we pulled it back. Legally, cleanly, quietly. The house, the estate, the authority they believed they had, was slipping from their hands, but they didn't know it yet. Tom called it surgical. No emotion, no noise, just facts, filings, and the law. We didn't challenge them in courtrooms. We challenged them in silence. They were blindsided. They had counted their inheritance before I'd even stopped breathing. But the will they assumed they'd inherited was no longer the one that mattered. The home they listed for sale? It had quietly been removed from the market, because the person they thought had no power had never given it away. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about truth, about naming what had been taken, and deciding who was worthy of what remained. And Maria? She didn't ask for it. She never hinted. She just showed up, day after day, year after year. I had nothing left to give her but a home, and that home meant everything. She had earned it, not through blood, but through presence. The children made plans, calculated, cold, and entitled. They thought the law was behind them, but it wasn't the law that failed them. It was their assumption that I had no more say. But I had a voice. I just chose to use it. After they stopped listening. Some memories never fade. If you believe some wounds run deeper than time, share this video with someone who understands. And tell me in the comments, Have you ever had to forgive someone who didn't deserve it? They came in like a storm. Not out of concern. Not because they missed me. But because they had finally realized what they were about to lose. It wasn't the birthday cards or the memories that brought them to my room that day. It was control. It was money. It was fear. Diane sharply. Mom, what did you do? You're letting people take advantage of you. Kyle accusing. We handled everything. We cleaned up your mess, and this is how you thank us. Evelyn doesn't flinch. She turns slowly toward them, her voice steady, soft, and precise. Evelyn, you didn't handle anything. You erased. You boxed my life into moving trucks while I was sedated. You sold off memories you didn't help create. You called it care. But it was convenience. Evelyn, I let you speak. Now you'll listen. The tension in the room stills. Evelyn slowly reaches into her drawer and pulls out a small envelope, sealed in red W. Evelyn, it was never just a house. It was your father's hands in every nail. My fingerprints in the corners of every room. The sound of your first cries in the hallway. And I could have left it to you, if you had remembered that. Silence stretches in the room. Then Evelyn continues, slowly, deliberately. Evelyn. But instead I left it to someone who did remember. Who stood by me when my legs wouldn't. Who brought me lemon pie when you forgot my birthday. Who saw a mother in me when you saw a burden. Evelyn. It's done. The house belongs to Maria now. And it always will. You cannot contest it. You will not overturn it. Evelyn, quietly. You thought you could control the end of my story. But you forgot whose story it was. Beat of silence. Evelyn, almost a whisper. I am not the weak old woman you tried to write off. I am the mother who remembered everything. And in the end, I made sure it mattered. They left with nothing. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because they had already left. Long before the will. Long before the paperwork. They left when I needed them most. And someone else stayed. Before the betrayal. Before the silence. And the signatures. And the storm that followed. There was Maria. Not in the spotlight. Not in the photos. But always there. Quiet. Constant. Unpaid, unseen. But unforgettable. After my surgery, when Diane couldn't take off work, and Kyle was too busy renovating his condo, Maria slept in the guest room for 2 weeks. She changed my bandages. She helped me bathe. She even brought in her own heating pad, because she said mine wasn't warm enough. Not once did she clock in. Not once did she mention pay. When Robert died, Maria didn't just wipe the counters. She wiped my tears. She prayed with me. Lit candles in the kitchen when I couldn't bring myself to walk into the living room. She sat beside me in silence while I stared at his chair for hours. She mourned him. Like family, even though no one gave her that title. She stayed late. Washed my sheets. Labeled my prescriptions. Left notes in the fridge reminding me to eat. When my memory started slipping, she started writing everything down. My schedule. My pills. She even labeled the cabinets with little index cards. Not because I asked, but because she saw me losing pieces of myself, and tried to hold them for me. She never drove. Took the last bus every night. Rain or shine. Summer or ice. She had her own family. A daughter in community college. A son in daycare. But she made time for me. Not because I was her boss, but because she saw a woman worth saving. She came to this country 20 years ago. A widow. She scrubbed hotel bathrooms, waited tables, cleaned houses that never learned her name. And then she came to mine. And stayed. Not because of the pay. God knows it wasn't much. But because we were two women, trying to survive grief. In different languages. She never asked for anything. Not a raise. Not a favor. Not even a thank you. She just kept showing up. So in the end, I gave her what no one ever gave her before. A name on a deed. A legacy she didn't have to beg for. Blood may tie us by birth. But love, loyalty, truth, that's what makes a home. When the papers were signed, they thought it was a bluff. When the deed was transferred, they thought it was reversible. But when the will was read, and Maria's name echoed in the quiet room of the attorney's office, they understood. Too late. They tried to fight it. They hired lawyers, filed motions, demanded that everything be undone. But the deed was airtight, crafted with precision, backed by a lawyer with a personal promise, to a man they never really knew. They blamed each other. The whispers began behind closed doors. Kyle accused Diane of rushing the plan. Diane accused Kyle of not securing her cut. And while they clawed at each other, their own worlds began to crack. Karma didn't knock. It walked in quietly, sat down at their dinner tables, and waited. Their homes, the ones they fought so hard to keep, slipped away. Creditors called. Mortgages collapsed. The market turned against them. No one remembered the designer bags, or the social club brunches. They only remembered what they did to their mother. The town remembered too, not with rage, but with quiet disapproval, the kind that lives in narrowed glances, and conversations that trail off when you walk into a room. They had traded their integrity for a house, and lost both. Maria didn't gloat. She didn't hold press conferences, or host parties. She just lived. She brought life back to that house. She opened the windows, let in light and prayer and purpose, the same way she once did. For me. And me? I left the nursing home quietly, just a new address, and a nameplate that still said, E. Moore. I didn't need the house. I had peace. A small garden, afternoon chess with women who remembered when stamps were 5 cents, and a bed that smelled like lavender, not disinfectant. I watched the sun set from my porch, the same way I used to from the kitchen window, just with fewer stairs and no one trying to take it from me. Some legacies live in marble, others in mansions. But mine lives in a woman's hands, strong from scrubbing other people's floors, now unlocking her own front door. I gave her everything, because she gave me the one thing my children forgot: dignity. Some stories end with silence, others end with applause, but the ones that stay with you, they end with truth, and begin again with peace. It had been 6 months since the will was read, since the dust settled, since the last lawyer filed the last page. I asked Maria if I could visit, not to inspect, not to reclaim, but to see what a house becomes when it's finally filled with love again. The walls still remembered me, but they had new memories now. Better ones. Warm ones. Children's artwork on the fridge. Shoes by the front door. Laughter that didn't feel forced, but free. Maria, I've kept this safe. I know you meant it, but if you want it back, if you ever change your mind. Evelyn softly. No. This house deserves love, not greed. Beat. Maria nods, overwhelmed. They both sip their tea. The clink of the spoon against the cup sounds like closure. I didn't need it back, because the moment I saw her standing on that porch, keys in her hand, smile on her face, I knew I didn't lose my home. I had passed it on. I went home that evening, to my new home. Not a mansion, just a modest cottage. 2 rooms, a garden out back, and something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I started volunteering at the local library, Tuesday mornings reading to kids, Wednesday afternoons helping seniors write their wills, real ones, fair ones. I found a way to help people who, like me, were told their story had ended before they had a chance to finish it. We don't get to choose how others treat us, but we do get to choose how we rise, how we love, how we carry ourselves through the ruins, until we find something worth rebuilding. And sometimes, what you rebuild is yourself. Now this is where things change. If you're still watching, you're one of us, the ones who know that quiet women carry the loudest storms. Hit like, share this with someone who loves a good twist, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories. You give them your life, your youth, your sacrifices, and sometimes, they sell it. They wrap your legacy in contracts. They put a price tag on your memories. They forget your hands bled, so there's never had to. But kindness, when given quietly, when given without strings, builds something else. Not a monument, not a fortune, but something far more eternal. A name remembered with gratitude, not guilt. A story that's passed down with pride, not shame. She once cleaned that house on her knees. Now her daughter walks its halls, free, proud, home. And me? I don't need statues. I don't need parades. I just needed to know that what I gave away freely meant something. They tried to write my ending, but they forgot. I'm still holding the pen. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, cry, or inspired you, leave a comment and tell me your thoughts. And hey, don't just subscribe, join our family. Turn on that bell so you never miss a story that needs to be told.